The Stingray glided low across the shallow reef, its wings brushing the sand in slow, steady pulses. It should have felt the familiar tug of the incoming current by now, the gentle pull from the outer sea, the subtle shift that signalled the reef's daily breathing. The Stingray had lived its entire life according to those movements. Everything on the reef did. Currents dictated feeding, hiding, hunting, migration. But today the water was still. Not calm, still. Still in a way that made the Stingray pause mid-glide, wings flattening as it hovered above the sand. The sea felt heavy, dense, almost warm in the wrong places. No flow brushed across its sensory pores, no shift in pressure or temperature told it where the deeper water moved. The Stingray drifted forward, confused, its body tense. Around it, schools of fish hung unnaturally in place, suspended in the flat water as though painted into it. Blue chromis floated near the branching corals, barely moving. A small group of goatfish milled in slow circles, whiskers trembling as they tried to locate the scent trails that currents usually carried. Even the parrotfish, normally bold and noisy, pecked quietly at algae-coated rock, glancing upward at the unnatural clarity of the water. The Stingray pushed forward again, gliding through a cloud of suspended sediment. Normally, sediment caressed its skin in long ribbons when water shifted direction. Today the grains hung around it like dust motes in air, falling straight down instead of drifting sideways. It dove toward the sandy bottom and stirred up a puff of sand. Instead of being whisked away by crossflow, the sand simply settled. Straight down. Instantly. Nothing was moving. Nothing was circulating. The Stingray lifted its head slightly, scanning with electromagnetic senses, but magnetic gradients felt flat, thermal layers felt smeared, salinity changes were blurred. All the invisible maps that guided it through the reef were fading. It flew closer to a coral head. Tiny damselfish peered out from between the branches. Their fins fluttered anxiously, too fast for the still water, as though they were trying to create their own current. One darted forward and bit at the Stingray's wingtip, not out of aggression, but out of confusion. The Stingray shivered and drifted away. Farther out, near the reef crest, a turtle floated motionlessly, head extended above the surface. It blinked slowly, tasting the air. Turtles depended on currents for direction. They used them as roads. But the water around the turtle did not move. Its flippers stirred gently in place, unsure which way led to deeper water. The Stingray circled the turtle once, then moved toward a channel where the reef opened into deeper blue. There, the change should have been unmistakable. The ocean swell pushing inward, pulling outward, forming a heartbeat the Stingray could feel for kilometers. But the channel was flat. The swell had not come. The surface above was mirror-smooth, sunlight cutting down in straight, harsh beams. No shimmering, no wavering, no motion. The Stingray passed beneath its own shadow and felt something else. Warmth trapped against the surface, radiating downward into the shallows. Without mixing currents, the heat stayed where it fell. A soft clunk echoed through the water. The Stingray startled and turned. A research boat sat near the reef's edge, its hull floating strangely still. Even gentle waves should have rocked it, but the boat looked like it was standing on solid ground. Humans on board shifted nervously. One leaned over the side, lowering a sensor. The cable fell straight down, no sway, no drift. Zero lateral flow, a researcher muttered. Another tapped the screen of a current meter. The numbers stayed flat. This makes no sense. There's no tide, no drift, no cross-reef circulation. A third spoke quietly, staring at the reef. If the currents don't shift, the oxygenation cycle stops. The Stingray didn't know the word oxygenation, but it understood the thick, stale feeling in the water. It swam deeper into the channel, searching for the familiar exchange of cool offshore water meeting warm reef water. But every layer felt the same. Warm near the surface, warmer below than it should have been. A Moorish idol swam past, turning in tight, confused spirals, mapping a world without gradients. The stingray dipped again toward the sand. Usually the sand's temperature told it the time of day. This time it felt uniformly warm, without the streaks of cooling from the ebbing tide. Heat clung to the ground like a blanket. A sudden metallic tapping vibrated through the water. The stingray turned back toward the boat. One of the humans stared into the water with tightening eyes. "Look at the particulate. It's not moving. It's suspended." Another lowered a probe deeper. Thermocline collapse, no vertical mixing. The stingray did not understand thermoclines, but it sensed one thing clearly. The water was losing its layers, losing its pulse, losing its life. A group of butterfly fish drifted past, their usual zigzag movements slowed to weary glides. One bumped into another, something that never happened when currents guided their spacing. A hungry grouper lurked near the coral but didn't lunge. Without flow, the scent of prey didn't reach it in the right direction. Everything was unraveling. The stingray turned toward a cleaner station, a patch of coral where small wrasses normally attended to larger fish, but no wrasses came. They hung in a loose cloud several meters away, unwilling to approach without the signaling currents that usually brought clients to them. The stingray circled the area once, twice, still nothing. A shadow passed over the reef, a shark, but even the shark looked uncertain. Its tail swept back and forth, overcompensating in the still water, as though expecting resistance that never came. It glided slowly, almost cautiously, then veered away. The stingray sank to the sand and lay flat, wings spread. It felt the weight of the stillness pressing down. Currents didn't just move water, they fed the reef, oxygenated it, cooled it, cleaned it, nourished it. Without them, heat built, waste accumulated, animals drifted lost, predators failed to hunt, prey failed to hide. The stingray tested the water again with its entire body, searching for even the faintest shift. Nothing. Not a push. Not a tug. Not a swirl. The sea had forgotten its motion. And if it didn't return tomorrow, or the next day, or the next tide, the reef would suffocate, the fish would weaken, corals would bleach under trapped heat, and the stingray, keeper of shallow sands and tidal breaths, would glide across a world that no longer stirred beneath its wings. A world where the currents, the ocean's heartbeat, refused to move. The stingray lifted itself slowly from the sand, its wings shedding a faint cloud of particles that fell straight down again, lifeless without a current to carry them. It hesitated, as if expecting some delayed drift, some aftermotion from the disturbance. But the water absorbed everything instantly, swallowing movement like a stagnant pool. It felt wrong in every pore lining its fins, like the sea had turned thick. It pushed forward again, gliding low. The water pressed against its body in a way it had never experienced, not with directional force, but with uniform heaviness. No layers, no gradient shift, no subtle push from offshore. It approached a coral bommy covered in branching staghorn. Normally this structure crackled softly as shrimp snapped beneath its branches. Today it was quiet, too quiet. A trio of clownfish hovered near an anemone, their motions laboured and sluggish. Their fins beat more than they should have. Without water moving around them, they struggled just to remain suspended. The stingray circled the bommy. Surface shimmer patterns from above were crisp, unnatural. No shifting waves to scatter the light. Sunbeams pierced the reef straight down like rigid pillars, illuminating fish that should have been sheltered in shadow. The stingray turned its body to shade itself, but even its shadow fell oddly still beneath it. It glided toward a cleaning station again. A surgeonfish floated nearby, tilting its body toward the station in a silent request to be cleaned. But the wrasses remained in a frustrated swirl several meters away. They couldn't smell the chemical signals from their clients. Without currents, nothing carried those chemical cues through the reef. The surgeonfish shuddered once, then wandered away slowly, still in need of cleaning. The stingray flapped harder, ascending toward the reef crest. It needed to understand how far the stillness reached. Usually by now, the deeper water surged upward, creating whirlpools of cool relief, the tide breathing through the reef. But as it rose, the Stingray sensed no change. The crest was as stagnant as the shallow sand. A school of fusiliers approached, their tight formation loose and confused. They turned at different times, bumping lightly into one another, unable to coordinate. Schooling fish relied heavily on currents. They read subtle pressures and used them to synchronize. Without that, they moved like birds in windless skies. The Stingray watched them scatter, each breaking away in a slow, unfocused drift. Above the crest, two sharks circled, a reef shark and a blacktip. Their bodies cut through the water with slow, hesitant strokes. Sharks used currents as much as scent and vision, to locate prey, to glide efficiently, to save energy. Now their tails swished harder, compensating for a lack of forward assistance. The reef shark dipped lower, passing close to the Stingray. Normally, the Stingray would feel the shark's movement as a pressure wave, an electric signature that washed across the sand. But today it felt muted, weak, almost lost in the thick, unmoving water. The shark turned abruptly, mouth slightly open, tasting the water. But everything dissolved too evenly. No scent trails, no directional cues. Predators and prey were both blind. The Stingray moved on. It drifted toward a patch of coral rubble where juvenile fish hid. But as it passed, the fish did not dart deeper into crevices. They hovered outside, confused by the stillness. Some even brushed against the Stingray's wings, something that would never happen if fear lines existed, if currents carried the Stingray's presence ahead of it. Near the center of the reef, it spotted something worse, a pale coral head. Not fully bleached, but paling. Heat. Heat was gathering. The Stingray hovered over it, its body trembling slightly. Corals could tolerate some warmth, but without currents, the heat stayed trapped around them, accumulating in layers like heavy blankets. Tiny polyps retracted slowly, their tentacles limp. A damselfish darted in front of the Stingray's face, then sank downward, exhausted. It breathed too quickly, gills opening and closing in frantic rhythm. Without water moving over them, fish had to work harder to breathe. A small explosion of bubbles startled the Stingray. It turned sharply. Humans. Their boat drifted above the deeper ridge. The team had deployed a second probe, and now two researchers were staring at the readings on a glowing tablet. 0 drift velocity, 0, not even subsurface. The shear layer collapsed completely. Stratification is dead. Look at this, thermal buildup in the top meter. This is lethal for the coral. The third scientist, the boat's captain, wiped sweat from his face. How long until fish kills begin? No one answered. The Stingray didn't know their language, but it felt the urgency in their gestures, the tension in their shoulders, the rapid shifting of their eyes. Humans rarely showed fear in the water, but now they smelled of it. The Stingray dove toward a deeper gash in the reef. Normally this trench held cooler water, a refuge where currents mixed the layers violently. But as it sank, it felt something it had never known. The deep was warmer than the shallow. Not by much, but enough. It trembled. At the trench's bottom, the water became murkier, not from motion, but from decay. Dead plankton drifted in slow, lazy clouds. Small gelatinous organisms hung like ghosts, unable to rise or fall without current support. A brittle star lay limp across a coral skeleton, barely moving. The Stingray backed away, unsettled. It rose once more toward the upper reef, scanning for any movement. A slight flutter of sediment caught its eye, but when it swam closer, it saw the truth. It was a dying sea cucumber expelling waste in stress, something it only did when environmental conditions collapsed. Fish passed it uncoordinated. Sharks circled without direction. Corals paled. Plankton died. Turtles waited at the surface, unable to read invisible roads. Everything depended on currents, and currents no longer existed. The Stingray returned to the sandy patch where it began. It settled onto the ground slowly. The sand felt warm, thick, unbreathing. It stretched its wings and listened for the faint hum of shifting water, the deep pulse of an incoming tide, the familiar heartbeat of the sea. None came. If the currents did not return tomorrow, or the next day, or the next tide, oxygen would vanish from deeper layers, fish would suffocate, corals would bleach in trapped heat, sharks would wander lost, and the reef would descend into a stillness too heavy to hold life, and the stingray, glider of tides, reader of water, child of flow, would inhabit a world where the sea had forgotten how to move. A world with no pulse,